Either Krishna or Christ become a tool for introducing earthly ideology, a tool for transforming the world and subordinating it to the Kremlin narratives.
That is, atheists can distinguish it, but such so-called spiritual personalities say no, it's all one and the same, it's just an illusion. In fact, when the war began, many leaders of religious denominations gathered together in Russia and supported this war. This means they went against their creed.
Hello and welcome to Ukraine in Flames, a special project by Ukraine Media Center and NGO Euro-Atlantic Force. And I'm your host, Miroslava Yaremkiv. Representatives of most religions in Ukraine serve in the armed forces. This include Christians, Orthodox, Catholics, and Protestants of various denominations, Jews and Muslims. The Institute of Military Chaplains was established in the armed forces to meet the religious needs of servicemen. Mostly representatives of Christian churches serve there. However, there are already chaplains who are imams, and there is also the first military rabbi. There are religions whose teachings prohibit believers from harming or killing other beings. In the context of the army, this means not taking up arms. This includes Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, and Krishnaism. Believers may also have specific dietary requirements, such as not eating food of animal origin. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the meaning of religious identity in the context of the war and the participation of representatives of religious minorities, particularly Krishnaites, in the defense of Ukraine against Russian aggression. If you want to learn more about the subject, please continue watching this video and subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss our videos in the future. During the war against Ukraine, Russia not only carries out repression based on religious affiliation in the occupied territories, but also uses religious topics to discredit Ukraine. Russia continues to use religion as a weapon in an attempt to discredit Ukraine on the international stage, and employs information operations on religion to advance its military goals. Oksana Horkusha, senior researcher at the Department of Religious Studies at the Skovoroda Institute of Philosophy, will talk more about Russia using religion to establish its idea of the Russian world.
Religious identity, confessional identity, and church identity are different identities. Religious identity is when a person has a strong connection or feels a close relationship with the sacred, with God, with the Creator, Krishna, etc. In different religions, we see the variations in the subject with which human consciousness is directly connected or indirectly connected, and to whom a religious person serves or interacts with and is oriented towards. This is called religious identity. Confessional identity is when a person relates or identifies himself or herself with a certain group of people who have a certain tradition, a certain common life experience, and a common interpretation of this life experience. It is, so to speak, faith-based on the one hand, and on the other hand, it is an empirically acquired identity. That is, when a person acts together with the fellow believers because they try to adapt the reality they are into the norms, rules, and values that religion gives to a person. But it's a group identity. We can talk about different confessional identities within the same religion. For example, in Christianity, if we would talk about Orthodox identity, Catholic identity, Protestant identity of various denominations, etc. That is, it's already a certain interpretation of how a person, not just a person, but fellow believers, share certain narratives, and they embody them. And church identity, when it belongs to a certain institution, it identifies itself with a certain institution. Now we see complex relations, for example, in the Orthodoxy, when supposedly they're all Orthodox and their confessional identity seems to be the same, but in fact they go to different churches, and we see the problems. The problems we have here are very tragic because church identity is institutional, and an institution has a certain hierarchical structure. It has leaders, a certain hierarchy, a group of people who assume the right to decide how it should be, how fellow believers should act, how interpret events, interpret activities, and inspire fellow believers to one on another form of activity. So we see that the problem arises when an institution has its governing center in the aggressor state. To put it simply, it is when an institution is subordinated to a center outside of Ukraine, for example. Moreover, if the governing center of this institution is in the aggressor state in Moscow, the institution itself cannot be free. How can a part of the body be free from consciousness from the head? Because the center is religious and makes decisions and sets interpretations. It says which narration is right and which is wrong. It gives instructions on how the followers of a certain religion should act and function. And what is actually happening? I believe we can say that at some point the Church can lose its confessional and religious identity by submitting to these forces of evil and turning into an idolatrous institution. What, in my opinion, is happening in Russia today? We see that the entire multi-confessional range of Russian churches has actually lost its confessional identity and is subordinated to one goal, one strategic goal, the establishment of the Russian world in the world. It doesn't matter what denomination a person belongs to. That is, it matters, but it is insignificant. Today, all denominations have gone crazy. I think this term can be used because free from God means someone who is subject to the demon. They actually become carriers of this idolatry. And we see similar processes not only in Orthodoxy, when they believe that the war of aggression against Ukraine is actually a sacred military operation, as Kirill declares. We see similar processes among Protestants when Protestants, please say we need to go and win back Ukraine and form the Russian world. We see similar processes in Krishnaism. I will talk about it today. Mr. Mikhailo believes that we must see why this is happening and how a certain denomination can replace the mainstream point of view of God or Krishna in order to build the Russian world here. Either Krishna or Christ become a tool for introducing earthly ideology, a tool for transforming the world and subordinating it to the Kremlin narratives.
What is the state of the International Society of Krishna Consciousness in Ukraine? Mikhailo Tashkov, an officer in the Assault Aviation Brigade and head of the Spiritual Matter Preaching and Volunteer Project, which supports Krishnaites in the armed forces of Ukraine and the families of the deceased, will talk more about it.
I see our guys, devotees of Krishna, go to war, fight, die. And I see how our society of Krishna consciousness in Ukraine has split. It has split into two distinct parts. One is the socialized, active part that lets all this war, all this pain, all this horror pass through itself, through its heart, and tries to somehow intervene to protect the right to existence of Ukraine and the Ukrainians, our children, our women, our mothers, our elderly, everyone. And there is another part that says we don't care. We have nothing to do with it, because it is an illusory world, and therefore all the processes that take place in this illusory world do not matter. That is, you are there, these are the scenes of the so-called karma, materialists, they are to blame. And we will sit in our cosmic aquariums, in these temples, waiting for some demons to devour other demons. We feel sorry for people, yeah. You have to be a complete cannibal to support the war, but that's the way it is. It's the karma of everyone who died there, whether a child or anyone else. We have nothing to do with it. That is, we also have those who are not interested. They say it's not ours, we did not send them there, they went by themselves, the state is an illusion, the heads of states are all demons, and they will fight with each other. This will always be the case, and they begin to count how many conflicts there are now in the world, and how many wars there have been, and it will last forever, and we will sit and sing. This is a childish, immature position, implying that nothing needs to be done. No one says that one should not chant mantras. No one says that one should not pray to God. No one is saying that. But it is a very strange situation that the values that we are trying to protect, the right to life and the right for freedom, are something unrelated to any denomination. This is a non-denominational value. Ethics, morality are the main laws that are inherent in everyone because they are built into us. Every living being, especially the one who has some intelligence, feels and understands this. I exist. I want no one to interrupt my existence, my life and the existence of my loved ones. Therefore, it's very strange when there are atheists, like, for example, Nevzorov, who says that there is no problem, I stand with the victim. Russia is the aggressor. There is a victim, it's Ukraine, these are Ukrainians, and although it is easier to side with the one who shoots, and it has always been easier for a conformist to join the strong one, but I stand with the victim in her defense. And this is what an atheist says. He can distinguish. This is a crime. This is a sin. This is adharma in Sanskrit. And for some reason, people in Ukraine do not understand this. I'm silent about those who are outside its borders because they do not have such experience when Ukrainians are denied the right to live. Russians want to take away our right to live. We have such experience, others do not, so we understand this. That is, atheists can distinguish it, but such so-called spiritual personalities say no, it's all one and the same, it's just an illusion, there is no victim, there is no aggressor.
What can be the solution to this issue of religious beliefs amidst the war of destruction? Mykolai Karpitsky, a professor at Volodymyr Dal East Ukrainian National University, believes it lies in communication and creating a platform for interfaith dialogue. Let's hear what he has to say.
Indeed, the Vaishnava tradition is a Brahmanic tradition that presupposes some distance from the world, some distance from social events. But it must be understood that this was justified by certain spiritual traditions, and the spiritual tradition shows us how to apply religious values in reality, in the reality of war. When the war of 2014 began, and it was a colonial war at first, the Vaishnavas knew that it was one of the worst that had happened in history. But from 2022, a completely different war begins. Not a colonial war, but a war of destruction. That is, I believe that these are two different wars. A war of extermination is defined by the fact that there is such a picture of the world where others have no right to exist. In this picture of the world, all values are turned upside down. Evil is considered good, good is considered evil, and any supporter of this picture of the world simultaneously contradicts any religious teaching, be it Vaishnavism or Christianity, etc. And what do I see? In fact, when the war began, many leaders of religious denominations gathered together in Russia and supported this war. This means they went against their creed, but they found a common ground. That is, they defined evil as a common interreligious solution, and that was it. And we also need to protect the good, so we need an interreligious solution. We need interfaith communication. If people have united around evil, we must unite around good. But here it turns out that each religion exists within itself, it is self-sufficient. The war showed that when there is a war that has never happened in history, not just some colonial war, but a war of complete destruction, then tradition doesn't help us. We need to communicate to determine how we should proceed, and here I propose a platform. Create platforms where we can communicate with Vaishnavas and we have already started this process. We work. That is, we have been communicating with Mr. Mikhailo for 2 years. There are many people involved, and many records are made. I want to say that I see it as a process. Mukunda Haridas, it is perceived as a state. He says that there are people who have defined themselves as cosmonauts, and I believe that these are not cosmonauts, these are spacers. They are completely detached from reality. And there are other people, but he perceives it as a state and it confuses him. And I perceive it not as a state but as a process. We must intervene in this process, we must influence this process, and this is the responsibility of us, scientists and philosophers.
You've been watching a special project of Ukraine Media Center and Euro-Atlantic course dedicated to the Russian-Ukrainian War, Ukraine in Flames. In the description under this video, you can find information on how you can help Ukraine fight Russian aggression. If you find our work useful, please like and share this video. Slava Ukraini!